After Germany lost World War I, the monarchy was taken out of power and a democracy was put in its place called the Weimar Republic. The treaty at the end of the war for Germany was the Treaty of Versailles, which was a very harsh treaty. It put restrictions on the German navy and military, took the Rhineland region and gave it to France, Belgium, the UK, and America, and forced Germany to pay heavy war reparations, and did even more things. Weimar Germany wasn't very stable, having many small parties, many of them being extremist right or left, and the economy was in shambles. Many average citizens and extremists wanted the government to be gotten rid of or changed. We'll be talking about some of these extremists in a moment. In early 1923, the German economy was so bad they couldn't pay their war reparations, so they went to the Allied powers and asked if the payments could be paused until their economy was better, and they were greeted with a no. When the Weimar Republic had to stop paying its reparations, France and Belgium were very upset. So the two invaded the Ruhr Valley, a very important region to the German economy located around here. The Weimar government paid workers to go on strike during this time. They were afraid to retaliate against the French and Belgians in a non-idle way. The loss of the Ruhr Valley and having to pay people not to work just made inflation in the economy worse, and this made people even more upset than they already were. Three of these people were Gustav von Kahr, Bavarian General Commissar, Otto von Lossow, Bavarian Armed Forces General, and Hans-Ritter Seischer, Bavarian State Police Chief. The three of them hated the Weimar government and saw its recent actions as cowardly and traitorous to the German people. The three of them spoke out against the government and hoped either civilians or police would try and overthrow it. When no one did, they decided to take action into their own hands. So on September 26th, Bavaria declared a state of emergency, and Gustav was given dictatorial powers. They planned a meeting at Burgerbraukeller Beer Hall, which was a large beer hall in Munich. They planned to discuss here what to do. At the same time, there was another group of people that were upset with the government. Well, a group of groups, the Kampfbund, and all of the far-right Bavarian groups inside of it, including the NSDAP, or Nazi Party, who were also upset. Adolf Hitler was in charge of the NSDAP since 1921, and he had planned to overthrow the Weimar government. Hitler and his goons had a plan to start their overthrow during a parade in Munich. The parade had too many armed police though, which made it risky, so they had to think of a new plan, and they did. Hitler knew about the meeting at Burgerbraukeller, and he and his goons came up with a new plan. The plan was that they would interrupt the meeting, force the three to support them. At the same time, they would take over important administrative, paramilitary buildings and the police barracks. They would get the police on their side, then march on Berlin and overthrow the government. It was November 8th, just about 8 o'clock. Gustav von Kahr and his two associates were hosting a meeting in the Burgerbraukeller Beer Hall. They were in the cellar, and Gustav was giving a reading of an anti-communism manifesto. Adolf Hitler entered the cellar as his bodyguard arrived. Hitler interrupted the meeting, storming through the crowd and knocking over tables. He then jumped on a table, shot his revolver into the ceiling, and announced, "The National Revolution is broken out. The hall is filled with 600 armed men. No one is allowed to leave. The Bavarian government and the government of Berlin are hereby deposed. A new government will be formed at once. The barracks of the Reichswehr and the police barracks are occupied. Both have rallied to the swastika," even though none of that was true except for the 600 armed men. Hitler made his way to the stage where the three Bavarian leaders were and forced them into an adjoining room. Hitler told the three he was in charge and offered them new jobs in the government. When they said no, he threatened them. After he threatened to kill them, they gave in their support. At the same time, Rudolf Hess and Ernst Röhm are leading the SA to the War Ministry, which they managed to take over. They get no telegraph or radio stations, though, and almost none of their original goals. Word is sent to Berlin of what's going on, and the Munich police soon will start assembling to stop this new revolution. Hitler has to leave the three, so he puts them in Ludendorff's hands. Ludendorff was quartermaster of the Second German Army at the end of World War I, and he had given his support to the Nazis. For some reason, Ludendorff lets the three go after Hitler leaves, and unsurprisingly they run away from the beer hall and publicly state they do not support any of what was happening. That night was a near failure. In the end, they didn't get the support they were seeking, or most of the buildings they were after, and didn't get the police on their side. It barely went according to plan. Next day, on November 9th, Hitler and everyone started marching to the War Ministry to meet up with Röhm and Hess. In the way, they were stopped by the Bavarian police at Odeonsplatz. Instead of surrendering or retreating, Hitler and everyone decided they would continue marching towards the police.
And a gunfight broke out in the street
between the two groups. Many of the Nazis were shot and injured, 14 were killed, 4 of the police also were killed while standing up to the Nazis.
One of the Nazis who was injured was Adolf Hitler.
He had his arm dislocated, and as the brave man he was, he got in a car and ran away. Later on, Nazi historians would say he left to bring a dying boy to the hospital, but that's obviously not true, and it's just funny to think about.
After the attempted push, Ernst Röhm surrendered to police, and Adolf Hitler and many of his associates were arrested.
On February 16, 1924, a few months later, Adolf Hitler went on trial for treason. This wasn't a very good or fair trial, though. The judges all either liked or tolerated Hitler. They were sympathetic with him, seeing him as a man trying to honestly save their country, like how most judges did with far-right extremists at the time. And he was friends with Bavarian Minister of Justice, Franz Gürtner, so he got a lot of special treatment from them. He was allowed to speak on his own behalf, cross-examine witnesses whenever he wanted. His opening statement was 4 hours long. Also during his trial, he wore his Iron Cross he earned during World War I. He knew this was international news and many people were looking, so he tried to make himself look the best he could.
During his trial, he said the 3 Bavarian leaders from earlier should also be found guilty, because they were planning on the same thing.
At the end of the trial, Hitler was sentenced to 5 years in Landsberg Castle, the lightest sentence. He should have been deported since he wasn't a German citizen, but again the judges were sympathetic to him.
Hitler only served 8 months in prison, being let out early.
Those 8 months, though, were more of an uncomfortable vacation than a prison sentence. He was allowed to wear citizen clothes, walk around the castle grounds, send and receive letters and presents, and his dog and friends were allowed to visit him.
During the sentence, he also wrote the first edition of Mein Kampf.
The conclusion. The beer hall push on the surface seems like a failure. In the beginning it was. Hitler's plans went terribly wrong, and in the end, him and his goons were found guilty and imprisoned for treason, but in reality, it wasn't a failure in the end. These events taught Hitler that he couldn't overthrow the government with a push or violence. He would have to use his freedom of speech, meeting, and press to climb the political ladder. He also got a lot of new supporters. Many Germans liked Hitler's cause and him, or at least what they knew of it. They wanted Germany to be great again, and he wanted to do that. He became a national figure. If it weren't for the push, we may have never gotten Adolf Hitler in charge of Germany.
And world history would have been completely different than it was in our timeline. And that's why I find the beer hall push to be a very historically important event. The video's over. Goodbye. Thank you for watching the video. I'm sorry how choppy and messed up it is, especially the audio. I tried to get this video done over a month ago, so I could release it on the 100th anniversary of the event, but everything went completely wrong, and I've had to try and re-record this audio again several times. So I apologize for that, and thank you for watching. Goodbye, for real this time.